Welcome back to Spider-Man Shattered Dimension. So now, after dealing with the 2099 version, let's start going Noir.
Oh yeah.
You realize, Theo, that you're doing this out of order beyond to Soul Style, right?
Actually, no, I'm doing the order tutorial imposed. So not imposed, but
Oh, never
showed.
mind. Then the game is doing things out of order because we're
Yeah.
jumping to 2099 and then we're going back again.
Remind
Anyway,
me, Tio. Are you also doing it in the order that the levels are actually presented to you?
No, the order we presented are Amazing, 2099, Ultimate, and Noir, I think. Anyway, don't mind. For now, cutscene.
Tip from Felicia Hardy.
Also, basically, if you don't know, Felicia Hardy is the identity of Black Cat.
Hey,
Or just a random secretary in Amazing Spider-Man 2?
Yeah.
And
And
Jova, don't you?
it's Hammerhead, voiced once again by John DiMaggio.
But don't you see,
Awesome.
Jova? It was supposed to be a fun little cameo.
Actually, no,
I'm gonna
they were
explain a
setting
bit
something up
more.
with that.
I'm gonna explain a bit more who's this guy later. For now, you all you need to know is that he's a mob boss, but he's also looking for the fragment, and Spider-Man is on his tail. Another thing you need to know is that this guy is extremely genre savvy.
Yep.
He lets his goon do a lot of the work, but a lot of times he points them actually to the right direction instead of, following big cliches.
Oh yeah, and he comes often heavy armed.
Yeah, two top. Yeah, again, that's actually a good segue, Jova. In these sections where Hammerhead is present on screen, do not be spotted because his Tommy gun will almost insta-kill you even on easy mode. So yeah.
The deal with Hammerhead is this. He was your random move, an everyday hitman every day, until his boss decided to make a few employee cuts and, well, blew him away. So what happened was that he was left in an alleyway, but then a mad doctor, one who got rejected by the medical community for ethical reasons, saw Hammerhead, decided, oh, I'm gonna show the world that I can actually bring people back to life. He actually didn't bring him back to life. Hammerhead was just near death. He wasn't completely dead. He was
Hold on,
mostly
anyway,
dead.
basically,
Mostly dead, yeah.
the things how they work in the Noir dimension, at least for the sake of this game, is that the Norman Osborn of this version, of this dimension, is actually, well, it was part of a circus freak show, but then he managed to take control and become an extremely powerful mafia boss. And, well, supposedly in the original Noir story, Spider-Man managed to defeat him because it was also a story of revenge, because Osborn and his goons managed to kill Uncle Ben for mafia purposes. But for now, for some reason, Osborn is back and is using his goons to actually gather the fragments for some reason that Spidey doesn't know why. But it's pretty clear to understand why. It's mostly power. And Hammerhead is one of these generals gathering the fragments for him. So the objective of his mission is gonna be following him and trying to get the fragment from him.
Why are you doing this?
But let's just see that, being genre savvy and he is, Hammerhead leaves a lot of hostages behind in order for you to clean the room before getting behind him.
And there's partly a reason for that. Going back to his origin story, so yeah, basically, in order to maintain Hammerhead's skull, because, well, the guy's skull was incredibly broken, the Mad Doctor implemented a metallic alloy, one that left his head, well, square to say the least, and incredibly hard to hit. As in, basically, he essentially has a metallic hammer for a head, hence the name Hammerhead.
Which he uses for his advantage, for the obvious reason that you can imagine.
So when Hammerhead was recovered, he was, you guessed it, amnesic. Basically, he originally came from Russia. Doesn't matter anymore, because now he got inspiration for his new persona by watching a lot of his old gangster flicks, even saw a poster of it, and thus studied up the heck about them. He talks like an old gangster boss, and he knows the ins and outs. The difference is that he doesn't make the same mistakes that gangsters would make back then. Gotta evolve with the times. And because of that, he makes sure that he has all his bases covered.
Yeah, not just that, it's tied to another organization, but for now the basics of this. The character was created in 1972 by Jerry Conway and, once again, by John Romita Jr. He's part of a major organization called the Maggia. Similar to the Falcone family in the DC universe, when you have a fictional universe with people with superpowers roaming around 24/7, being just a normal, gangster is really difficult. So in the
Yeah.
Marvel universe, the major gangster families actually forcefully united together into a gigantic big group called the Maja, in order to actually do their proper work without the superheroes interfering too much. The major families are tied to Hammerhead, another villain called Madame Mask, and another guy called Count Nefaria. But the whole gist we need to know is that Hammerhead has an important position in that group, and occasionally, but with a couple of other heroes. He was mostly a villain to Iron Man, I think, but he occasionally had some butts with Spider-Man. And he was
Wait, hold
present
on.
in the... He
Hammerhead's-
was in the animated series of Spider-Man, voiced, as I mentioned, by John DiMaggio. So that's why we reprised the role with.
Yeah, regarding Hammerhead, he started off as a Spider-Man villain.
I think, yeah, I did, but since the Maja was mostly tied to Hammerhead for a couple of decades, he was also involved in that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's like, well, he's still mainly a Spider-Man villain. It's sort of like with Kingpin. Started off as a
Yeah.
Spider-Man villain, yeah, trades wells with Daredevil quite a bit.
Surprisingly enough, Kingpin is completely absent in this game. You think they would have put him, but whatever.
Don't worry, he'll make up for that in Web of Shadows.
He's also in the first Amazing Spider-Man game, I think.
Ah,
Also, the good thing, the interesting thing about the Noir universe, since it has a more quiet pace, there's a lot more talking going around. In this case, Hammerhead is saying that the fragments that he took started doing weird shit, like speaking to him.
He's got Osborn pulling his
Basically, it's the idea that the fragment is tempting to give him powers, and since it's the Noir universe, it's relatively more grounded in terms of superpowers and how the mysteriousness is handled. These things appears completely unnatural. Anyway, essentially this is how the Noir with Noir levels are going to be structured. You'll be in a series of rooms with some hostages to free and the enemies to take down in a stealth way. When Hammerhead is not around, you're just hinted to the fact that you better don't do anything and just waiting for to leave the room. Don't worry, there's not a time limit or anything, so you have all the time you need to complete the mission. But again, if you get spotted, again, even just the simple mooks can actually give you serious damage. And you're at the point, now early in the game, where you don't have a lot of health. So if you get spotted, it's very easy for you to die even on easy mode.
anyway, as Hammerhead has just said, Vulture's also in on this too. Oh boy,
Yeah.
Vulture in the Noir universe.
Oh, yeah, well, we'll get to him, Joe, in a couple of parts.
That's
But,
gonna be fun.
Vulture is the only character that was actually originally from the Noir universe in this case. Hammerhead was created specifically, but being set in a Noir setting, a gangster like him actually fits like a glove. So it's a
Yeah.
perfectly reasonable choice for
To
it
the
to
point
be.
where he's essentially the same character, just in a time period where his dialect actually makes more sense.
Pretty, especially it's useful considering, despite the whole metal skull thing, he doesn't have any particular superpower, just these trusty Tommy guns, and that's it.
And ironically his brain, damaged as it is.
Yeah.
You know, one thing I always liked about Hammerhead was that he showed that you can actually be a pretty keen supervillain even by using weapons that were big back in the 1930s if you just use them strategically enough.
True, Jova. It's a case, Jova, where simplicity actually works for the better here. And I think that happens in all these superhero stories that, you need to think that things need to be big, grandiose, super complicated, and extraordinary. But surprisingly, no. A lot of times, just some simplicity is fine. Like, for example, with Deathstroke in the DC universe. He doesn't have, aside from your typical super strength that also Batman has, he just has a couple of weapons in his arsenal, but that's it.
So what did I miss?
Essentially.
Basically, Dweebs, we need to save some hostages and follow Hammerhead, which, if you don't remember, is essentially a gangster boss. Anyway, cutscene.
Okay.
Don't tell me you haven't killed him yet.
The Punisher?
Tearing the place
No.
apart, freeing the hostages, ripping the gates up, knocking out the guys. That's so.
Yeah, here's another thing. In true Mafia Boss tradition, you don't need to fuck up an order that he gives to you.
Spider, you
At least he didn't kill the guy.
These voices are fantastic.
Yeah. Again, well, John DiMaggio gives. Well, John DiMaggio is usually like a blast to listen. So, and he just fits the role.
I was surprised that I did hear a little bit of his Uka Uka in the Radical games that he did, but I didn't even know it was still him in the Insane trilogy till I looked it up.
Same. I
Yeah,
originally
me
thought it
too.
was. At first, I thought it was Escort Bullock, actually.
But no, from what I can tell, Vicarious Visions just pretty much.
No, that's Scott Bullock. Sorry, I forgot. It's another name. Go ahead, Libs.
But my guess is Vicarious Visions just told him, just do your best Clancy Brown impression or something.
Also,
Scott McNeil. There
I
you go.
think he still sounds different enough to Clancy Brown.
Yeah.
oh, he does. So yeah, here's a nice attention to detail. Make sure you don't walk too fast, otherwise your shadow will be cast onto that, and they'll know you're there.
Yeah.
So basically,
also,
make sure you're
I
on
did
something.
the whole walking also for scene. No, not cinematic, but for the sake of the scene. And also, in true tradition, you completely ignore those two guys. You don't actually even get a chance to take them down. Spider-Man just goes through them.
That's Spidey for you.
Essentially because again, in the Noir universe, Spider-Man Peter is actually more cold,
Pragmatic.
calculated, and way less inclined to joke. He still does them, but like Jova mentioned, he's more in the snarky attitude. He's instead less of his jokes actually are not intentionally bad, like say the normal Spider-Man. He's more down to earth when it comes to humor.
Which kind of makes sense considering how they brought back the voice actor from the 90s show, because the 90s show was all about being, well, overall, it could be silly. Heck, it even had lines specifically taking the piss
He's
out of
starting to
it.
sound like a bad comic book plot.
Or, Mr. Jones, this is a court of law, not a Saturday morning cartoon.
Wink, wink.
Yeah, it is pretty weird hearing Barnes put on a bit more of a gruff voice for this Spider-Man.
But I can see why they brought him back for this one, because, 90s Spider-Man was definitely, it had the corniness, but it also had quite a bit of snark to it as well.
Also, there's a particular
God.
achievement trophy. Yeah, that's exactly what I meant. Do not get caught. But anyway, the good thing is that you respawn at the last checkpoint, which is usually at the beginning of a room. So outside of taking down the guys, you don't lose any particular progress. One thing that there's a specific achievement trophy for clearly one of these levels without getting caught a single time. It's actually more difficult than it sounds. Like you think that even on the first level it will be very easy, but it's actually really easy also to get caught because you can be careless actually by accident, even in a single room. And if you get caught a single time, you don't get it. There we go. Anyway,
I just realized, I noticed that a lot of these stealth and takedown mechanics are similar to the ones
also,
used in the
another
Amazing
thing, if you get
Spider-Man
caught,
game.
if you get caught, don't even try to think that you can get away by punching the guy who caught you, because they actually parry almost all your attacks. Sorry, you were asking, Jova?
I realize now, a lot of those takedown animations are exactly the takedown animations from the first Amazing Spider-Man game.
Again, Beanox after this recycled a lot of assets, which in turn, out of these assets are also recycled from both the PS1 game and the 2002 game. Based on the first movie. So again, in a sense, the Spider-Man games have always stayed kind of consistent in tones so far, with some major exception like Web
Amazing
of Shadows.
Spider-Man 2.
Yeah, for the better or the worst. Also,
And
another
then
cool
there's-
thing
go on.
is that where, depending on where you're positioned, your takedown animation are actually really different, and there's actually quite a lot of them.
Yeah.
So it takes actually a while before they get repetitive.
It's for reasons like this where I can kind of consider Spider-Man Noir the best of the Spider-Mans in this game, gameplay-wise, because, like, well,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, Miko, you actually have the most sense of variety here of what you can, or, what is actually useful to you. Whereas, in Amazing Spider-Man and Ultimate Spider-Man, essentially it's just knock these dudes down with your Spidey fist. Whereas with this one, it's like, yeah, you can knock some down with your fist, but not all. And God help you if you try to knock them all down with your fist, because you'll be shot faster than you can say Stan Lee.
major stealth game like, say, Metal Gear Solid or Metal Gear, or again the Batman Arkham games, for example, in the Predator sections, this is actually relatively simpler in terms of controlling what you need to do. It's clear that Beanox has never done a stealth game before, so they actually wanted to go for the easy route. But to me, it's still a pretty successful attempt.
Yeah.
It's only in the third level, the one against Osborn himself, that things start to get really repetitive. Sadly, actually, because until then, this is pretty much, I agree with Jova, this is actually my favorite of the Dimension style. If I had to rank it, it's this one, Ultimate as a second place, Amazing as the third place, and last the 2099, which is sad because
Ironic,
again, the
because 2099 is your
it's my
favorite.
favorite. But the problem is
Yeah.
that it's structurally the same as the other two major, but the combat is much more impeded because the original function that you have is actually not that helpful to begin with.
And I can see why you
Anyway-
consider Ultimate Spider-Man second place, because it's essentially Amazing Spider-Man, but with the Venom mechanics added on,
Yeah,
which given more
it's
flavor.
actually really fun to when it comes to combat.
Spider-Man
Anyway.
Noir for me is just the full package, not only because of the gameplay, but also because of
Yeah,
the
I agree. It
dialogue.
should have been its own game, if I have to be honest.
Yeah.
Anyway, seems very it's all quiet, but no.
Eek!
You think you can take me?
So first
I'll
boss
go
fight,
and take your heart
and
out.
since Hammerhead knows that you are in the shadow, what does he do? He has modified an entire converger set in the train yard with a gigantic machine gun and lights pointed at you. You need to be extremely stealthy in this one.
Hey, just because he's old-fashioned doesn't mean there weren't big guns back then.
Also, don't think that those columns can hide you forever. They get destroyed really easy, especially in hard mode, so get a move.
Which makes sense. He's using a
Well,
freaking
he's not wrong.
he's using a freaking Gatling gun. Give that,
Like,
give those
there's
guns
a
enough time,
reason-
they'll tear through a lot.
There's a reason why Madame Web gives you an hint immediately, regardless of what you do. You do need kind of a hint here. Anyway, essentially the thing we need to do is to get behind while he's searching with the lights and
Ow!
actually have a takedown. Do
Only-
it 3 times and you're done.
Only problem is his head is so hard, he doesn't go down that easily.
Not just that, immediately after you're knocked out, you knocked him out, he turns around and starts shooting, so you need to get away quickly.
Yeah, here's the deal with Hammerhead. Word of advice, do not try and punch him in the head. Spider-Man has spider strength, and that nearly broke his hand once.
Yeah.
Anyway, also it's also a good point to talk about the composer of this game, because again, the soundtrack is mostly fine for almost all stages. There are couples that are not that memorable, but for this one, well, for example, for all the Noir tracks are actually really good.
I think this one really fits with what's going on.
It really
Yeah.
does.
The composer is called James Dooley. He did quite a lot of different works,
Ow.
but for a lot of video games. He composed for the Da Vinci Code of all things, and Black Hawk Down. He apparently seemed to love to work with Hans Zimmer occasionally. Game-wise, he composed for the Infamous video game, at least the first 2. I don't know if he did Return for Second Son, and the Epic Mickey games, surprisingly. So it's kind of a versatile. Yeah, the one that was made by Warren Spector. Also, yeah, as the fight progresses, more searchlights are actually pointed, and as soon as you get spotted, it turns around and starts shooting at you. So the shadow spot where you can actually hide are getting more and more limited.
So yeah, just like Mr. Freeze, he learns from his mistakes.
Yeah.
Clearly.
Oh yeah, well, to be honest, again, the fight with Mr. Freeze in Batman Arkham City is actually really good when it comes to stealth bosses.
I never got why they
Oh,
never had
there you go.
another. Oh,
Oh yeah, here's another
No more.
tactic.
Please, I give.
Sure.
Had enough, huh?
Nah, let's
Heading
punch
over
him.
that rock.
Bonk.
ow!
Ow!
Trust me, a forehead hit from
Well, what did you
Hammerhead.
think was gonna happen? Come on.
Here's another thing of Spidey. He not that wise. Hold on, listen to this dialogue. It's actually very interesting.
Okay.
If we continue on this path, we
Fuck,
may just
madam.
God.
Hey, hold on. Hold on.
Damn, the ladies' man.
Well, yeah, basically the gist of it is that they used a bit of Dr. Seuss type of rhyme. Basically, they said that Hammerhead killed some guy, and this in another book says about some guy named Fancy Dan, and we do a lot of rhyming there. Sorry, I actually forgot about this fuck up.
It makes sense because Dr. Seuss was sort of a rising star around the time.
Yeah.
Was getting interrupted a common source of Dr. Seuss?
Well, according to some of the modern adaptation of his work, apparently yes, there is. Also anime references for some reason.
But yeah, basically, let's just say, you get a headbutt from Hammerhead, you better be wearing a helmet yourself.
Yeah.
Or have Spidey powers again.
Now, to be fair, the only major downside is that he's relatively not well utilized as a villain. Like Jova said, occasionally he did butts with Spider-Man, and being part of a Maja gets to head around against Iron Man. But due to his position being a relatively minor one, usually when it comes to Maja stories against Iron Man, it's Madame Mask, the one that gets all the fucking spotlight, and I don't like that. Because I don't think Madame Mask is an interesting villain, but that's another point.
There was that one time when Hammerhead actually got to stick it to Thanos, though.
True.
Thanos is never gonna live that one down.
No, Pedro. Sorry, Jova. Remember, the one thing that Thanos will never live down is actually not being able to properly use his Thanos copter.
God, that dude.
God, man,
again, we're recording this right before Infinity War, and I won my fucking Thanos copter. So.
Maybe for Avengers 4.
Not numbered. I need to contact my other men for backup. Man, I need help here. I'm being ambushed by the Spider-Man.
Sure you are, Frank.
I'm serious. Look,
sorry,
I can see one of my men hanging up from the rafters.
Here's an interesting thing. Unlike with most of stealth games where you usually have the mooks having to radio contact each other, here the 1920s excuse makes the mooks actually kind of feel isolated with each other.
Oh, there were no. Oh yeah, there's no.
There's no
Basically,
walkie-talkies.
it's another rescue the hostage situation. Only that the room is bigger.
And if you get spotted.
Yeah. The mooks in this particular room have essentially the same firepower as Hammerhead himself, so if you get caught, you die instantly.
Oh, even worse, if you also get spotted and they can't hit you, then they'll kill the hostages.
Yeah, so don't fuck up.
Sayonara. Lady showed up to me this time. Gotta grab the shadows and make my play. Take these palookas down one by one.
What the hell does that even mean, Joe?
Oh, palooka. That means basically a big ape like, or, you know, a dummy. You know, sort of something you hear a lot on the Looney Tunes.
A term for that time period, I guess. Again, they did... Again, I really commend Beanox. They did really a fine job with the presentation and sticking with the time period.
You know,
it also gets integrated in the 2099 level, where basically a gimmick of the 2099 universe is that since it was trying to, at this for the comic, it tried to be edgy, but it still needed to appease to a younger audience. They couldn't actually swear, so every time there's a word like shit or fuck, they actually replaced it with the word shock. And the excuse is that in the future, everyone swears like that. Everyone says shock when swearing. And this actually gets translated both here and in Edge of Time.
Yep.
Basically, every time Spidey, Miguel O'Hara needs to swear, instead he says shock. I don't remember if there was a particular instance in the Hobgoblin level, but in the next two, actually, there's gonna be one fitting for that.
So basically,
anyway,
if you say
there's only
shock,
this
you're
room.
swearing up a storm.
Oh, jeez. Yeah.
Thanks for getting me, Spider-Man.
Also, another one of the minor bad things is that there's a lot of recycling voice actors when it comes to both the mooks and the rescuing hostages. Particularly Nolan North and James Arnold Taylor. They're doing a fine job on their own, but you're hearing their voices constantly here, so it takes away kind of a bit of immersion.
Which is kind of weird, because like when Spider-Man 2, you had a pretty good wide variety for, you know, NPCs.
Not just that, the other Spider-Man section actually have some variety in the mook voices. So I don't know exactly what happened with the direction here.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. This Spider-Man Noir needs its own game, because like seriously though.
Desperately.
I mean seriously, out of the 4 Spider-Man here, Noir's the one with the least representation. And that's a flipping shame because Noir is such a great concept that's been done in a lot of cases, but for some reason, not many people do it with Spider-Man. Like, seriously, it's a basically Detective Spider-Man. How could you not make something out of that?
My guess also is that Activision feared that due to the popularity of the Batman Arkham games, they would have one attempt from them would not sell enough, and since they care only about mullahs, they wouldn't have bothered or something. That's also why a lot of later games will actually be copy-pasted and start losing actually original plots.
To the point where Amazing Spider-Man 2, well, that did not do well.
Well, if I have to be honest, Jova, even the first Amazing Spider-Man, when it comes to adding original stuff to the plot, is actually not that interesting or good to begin with. Like,
it's essentially a sequel
they
to
say,
the
oh,
movie.
there's Carnage, but look, just like everything, it's Oscorp's fault.
Hold on,
That's
wait, hold on. The whole Carnage thing, that's an Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Actually, I thought it was in 1.
No,
Whatever.
no. Although,
There was
I can remember the
in
thing
1, I
developers.
forgot. Yeah.
yes, Dubs?
Yes, Dubs?
I was just saying, yeah, maybe Tia got them confused because they were made by the same developers.
Beanox. Again, it's still Beanox.
Well,
up
yeah,
until
that's the
that
deal,
bit.
Dubs. Beanox were the sole Spidey developer since,
Since either this one or one before. Let me
Ultimate
check.
Spider-Man. I know that I'm pretty sure they also had a hand in Ultimate Spider-Man, or if not, they definitely inherited the assets from whichever company made that.
Actually, no. This one was actually the first Spider-Man game they did. Before they did a couple of licensed games, like the B-movie game and Monsters vs. Aliens. Then they did a Guitar Hero game, and then we started doing Spider-Man games here. They collaborated also on some Skylanders game and on and they did Call of Duty Modern Warfare Remastered. With some additional work. Ever since 2016, they haven't done nothing. But again, I hope that with Spider-Man being taken care by Insomniac and Sony, now Activision has some actual decent works from them now.
I mean, poor Peanuts. I mean, don't get me wrong, though, they themselves screwed the pooch a few cases. Though I can't help
honestly,
but...
it's like Angry Joe said in the Amazing Spider-Man 2 video game review. I'm willing to sympathize with them because at that point, we were probably so checked out with Activision just forcing them copy-paste the same engine again and again.
Oh, that's another thing I was about to say. Amazing Spider-Man 2 is one of those projects where the devs... where it feels like the devs are feeling bitter. Because, stuff like that stupid, hero or menace mechanic really just screams bitterness. Like, yeah, it's technically a new element. Problem is, it's an element that really, really drags down the gameplay, like, really badly.
True.
And then there's the story itself, which is...
Unlike in the hero or... hero symbionte options in Web of Shadows. The difference is that in Amazing Spider-Man 2 that morality system drags.
Also...
anyway, we're about to get a cutscene. I just need to reposition myself. There you go. So since I destroyed all the civilians,
Want this tough guy? Come and take it. Just you and me.
Sure.
Mano a mano.
That suits me fine.
Let's see what
Do
happens.
you really think we're gonna fall for this?
Finish him, boys. You miserable
It's not like we're
bastard.
unfamiliar with this shit.
So, oh shit. Here's one of
Okay, I didn't expect the train to be fast.
here's one of the few sections of actual combat. If it works actually just in the previous Spider-Man games, the only major thing that Spider-Man Noir will have eventually, I haven't unlocked yet, is a special attack where he punches really fast. The only major things in this fight is that trains passes constantly and they're an insta-kill, so move away as soon as you spot them. Thankfully, your spider sense also, checks on you. So if you don't feel immediately, the game will gonna tell you.
Aside
And
from
the
the
fight
fifth one, it
strategy.
seems to move slow enough that you can get out of the way.
Yeah, and also these introduce the big Mook, the one was gonna introduce also in later level.
Huh.
Strong silent type. Gotcha.
Wow. I mean, it's even got the big Titanesque mook like in Arkham Asylum.
Yeah, and you do not have to get out of the way because otherwise, out of the arena, otherwise you... But since you know, mob the 4 with them, the other says, fuck it.
What's to this? Let's beat it.
Right behind you.
Smart.
You idiots! You're all worthless!
I'm coming for you, Hammerhead. Time for that mano a mano we talked about earlier.
So, since it's a desperate situation, now Hammerhead is gonna activate the fragment.
My shiny metal.
So, think about this, guys. So far you had a guy that's extremely genre-savvy and with 2 deadly Tommy guns. What's gonna happen when he gets imbued with magical powers from a tablet, a fragment?
Gee, I wonder.
Well, they have a different target each villain, but in this case, they transform one of his Tommy gun into a fucking bazooka and refused it to his arms.
Get rid of us. I'll own this town. Ready for a real
I get the feeling, though, that your everyday life is gonna be a bit tough to deal with, though, with guns for hands.
So, here's an interesting thing. This combines both action and stealth. What you need to do now is make you get spotted, actually allowing to use his rocket launcher arm on this particular pressure boiler things. I don't even know what they are. There you go, like this. Which in turn exploding will fill the room with steam. Then using your spider sense, you need to track down Hammer where he is, up to a convenient spot, and use a silent takedown. Do it 3 times, or 4, I forgot, and you're done. But again, don't get in his way, because even the pea shooters that you have on the right arm can actually do some major damage. Also again, with the Monsters Inc. music, I don't know.
It's jazz.
Yeah.
Harlem jazz.
It fits. And
Absolutely.
out of the 3 levels, I think it's the one that fits more. Again, not to knock over the other 2 levels, but I honestly think that this actually fits more the mood.
It helps the best because, again, it's Hammerhead. Like, I'm almost surprised they didn't make him the final boss of the Noir verse. I mean,
again, they wanted to go for the whole Mook thing, I guess, and because they had to reserve the Goblin spot for this particular dimension, which I don't understand at the end of the day, but we'll get to that.
That's one of the tragic ironies of a character like Hammerhead. Even though he gets to be awesome, essentially more often than not, he's the dragon, like the second in command. Like, he should be the guy in charge, but he's the one who's second in command. Again. Like I said, that time he actually gets to mount the 4 with Thanos, though. I mean, again, that
also,
was something.
Don't even think about doing the web strike against him, because he had Batsuit and chunks away all of your health. Yeah, like this.
It's not okay. Look, he was dangerous enough with just the titanium alloy in his head. Now he's got hands that you do not want to shake. I mean, unless you want to wake up with a giant hole in your chest.
Alright, the thing that you need to do to trigger his bazooka launcher is to throw objects at him.
Well, there's a reason.
Basically, if you actually run out, thanks to him destroying part of a level, it makes it actually easier for you to grab some debris. But the problem is that you need the right position like that. There you go. Alright, it's only 3 times with the boiler thing, because after I'm done with this... Alright, there you go. Yeah, he still has some part of his health, but he gets really pissed off.
Oh.
So now he's gonna decide to take things more directly. He says, fuck the ranged weapons. He's gonna try charging us basing. What you need to do is bait him to actually rush against one of the walls. There you go. Then to grab him.
Well, that's his iconic head charge. Basically, another thing Hammerhead can do is that when he runs fast enough, he can crash through things. Like, I mean, he's no Rhino, but he can still punch a hole through some pretty strong armor.
Yeah. There you go. Then you need to grab it. I think the problem... Yeah, there you go. You need to grab him, do a first-person fight, and you're done.
I can't break. I guess you can't just break his neck, because.
No, besides, actually, no. There's the thing. I was actually about to fuck up because Spider-Noir actually kills people. Gun normally. They just forgot about it in this game for convenient purposes, and I honestly don't blame them because, you know, still supposed to be for kids.
Also, I like how Spider-Man Noir does learn because instead of doing the obvious headbutt, he knees him instead.
Yeah.
The floating head lady.
Sorry about that.
There
Besides,
we go.
which is funny because out of all the animated Spider-Man, Christopher Daniel Barnes was the one associated with the show that used Madam Web the most, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have the entire one of the final story arcs. One of my favorite ones, the one that first has Spider-Man and a bunch of superheroes against a bunch of supervillains on a alien planet. Forgot what it was called. And then you have a Spider-Man crossover with several other Spider-Mans, like the Spider Armor guy, the one where he turns into a Spider-Man. Oh, no, cutscene.
I remember that one.
After you completed the first 4 levels, you get this cutscene with Stan Lee reprising the narration. But that's the thing, while this is going on, Mysterious is trying to understand his powers. No, you're not intimidating still.
Venom calls him Bubble Man for a reason.
And for my next trick, I make 2 policemen disappear.
Venom looks gross, by the way.
Oh yeah!
That's kind of the point. Yeah.
Okay, congrats. We actually do see Venom in that movie. Now, if he's in there for the majority, that's another story.
You talk about the new Venom movie?
That'd be like saying, oh my god, Spider-Man's got web or something.
Anyway, after completing the first 4 levels, you unlock the next 4. So we're doing the cycle again. So next, we're gonna go back to the Amazing universe for the second level against Sandman. So see you for that.
All right then.
See ya.
See ya.
Yeah.